This week on the High Limit Room, High Limit Racing co-owner Brad Sweet, he will join the show to talk about the most recent Joker Fund announcement, also the High Roller Club, the overall health of sprint car racing, and High Limit International at the Perth Motorplex. We dive into all of that and a lot more on this week's episode. All right, we are now joined by High Limit Racing co-owner and now I guess you could call him retired driver, Brad Sweet. Brad, we want to have you on this week here of the High Limit Room just to talk about all the announcements that have come out here recently surrounding the series with the new High Roller Club or the announcement of the High Roller Club, as well as the Jokers Fund that was unveiled about a week or so ago. And there's been a lot of buzz around both of those items, especially the Jokers Fund. But kind of just go through with us here, briefly what's been going into all these announcements here recently, because I mean it's a lot of information to take in for not only the drivers and whatnot, for the fans as well. Yeah,
the High Roller Club, obviously just trying to brand it around everything with High Limit and kind of the theme that we built, and maybe trying to simplify it a little bit for the fans with the cards and things like that, so they can understand the ace and what the values of the cards are, to try to give them some perspective there. And then obviously we created this High Rollers Club and knew that we needed to have a spot for the non-franchise teams, so just basically created the Jokers Fund for that purpose, and had a lot of that information ready to go a while ago, but just was waiting for the season to end to kind of get it out to all the teams after they could look at the schedules and stuff. And we know there's going to be a lot of decisions to be made, and hopefully we put something out there that looks really appealing to our High Roller Club teams that have earned it, and also the teams that are maybe on the outside looking in to come compete with High Limit for the next few seasons.
Brad, I don't like to use big cliches very often because rarely do they actually sync up with what you're trying to talk about. But I think this truly is a groundbreaking announcement. This is a groundbreaking innovation in sprint car racing. Obviously, I think everybody can tell the whole goal, the idea, is to make it sustainable and then eventually profitable for sprint car owners to operate and go racing on a big national level. As it takes so much money, this is a way to help ease that pain and ease it a lot. But I want to know, when does this idea first come up? Again, everyone gets why, everyone gets the idea, but what do you remember about the discussions, the folks involved? When did it come to your thought that, hey, this is something that sprint car racing can actually do and sustain? What do you remember about the very, very early germination of this idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think just me being, a driver and a big part of, the Napa 49 car for all those years on the World of Outlaw Tour, I think, just always kind of fighting through each year, the economics of sprint car racing, and then, kind of the optics that it's more of just a hobby for, a lot of, maybe rich car owners, and, trying to, I guess change that narrative a little, and try to make it a more professional business, and, trying to give these team owners a light at the end of the tunnel. So, I think I've had it in my mind for a long time that, wanted to, change that dynamic a little bit of how, sprint car teams are ran and managed, and, was obviously heavily involved, with Casey and Casey Kane Racing for a long time, and, experienced those challenges firsthand. And so, when we created High Limit, the foundation we wanted to build it on was a great partnership with the race teams. We knew that was very important to have a great relationship and to build something, that was good for not only the series, but was good for those car owners as well, because they're the backbone, and they're truly our partners. So transparency is really important, and growing together is really important at High Limit Racing. So knowing what your car is going to be able to bring in, before the year starts, is a huge help in the planning phase of trying to put budgets together, and knowing what you need in sponsorship and other forms of revenues that drive the sport. So, yeah, just, trying to do it on a 2-year running average, with the money, kind of already in the budget for the following year so that the team owners can, hopefully start to eventually turn a profit in sprint car racing. I think it's, our ultimate goal is to kind of have these revenues from the media rights cover a lot of the operating costs. And, we want this sport to thrive, and we want more owners to want to invest in sprint car racing. And I think we're headed in the right direction with what we launched so far, but we also see a lot of growth potential in the future.
I've got a ton of questions for you here coming up. The Joker's Fund, it's obviously very appealing. 6 teams could potentially leave next year with 6 figures in their pocket, over $100,000 if they are able to quote unquote play their cards correctly. And there's a lot of people that seem to be pretty interested in it, but you're behind the scenes, you're talking to these team owners and whatnot. And I'm not expecting you to say any names or whatever, but has there been a lot of outreach from different teams and whatnot since the Joker's Fund announcement here about a week ago?
Yeah, certainly, some teams that we didn't expect and some teams that we did expect, I've inquired about it. I don't think there's, a ton of firm commitments out there, but certainly think there's a lot of interest in trying to understand, the differences and what we're offering and, the commitment on both sides. So, yeah, I mean, it's exciting to see so much interest in a way, because it's always an idea, and you're really hopeful that what you're putting out is going to, be intriguing and exciting for these race teams, because they make a large investment, into the sport, and we want them to believe in what High Limit's doing. So it's definitely exciting to talk to some of these different owners and hear the excitement and the interest. So yeah, I think there's still a lot of moving parts. I don't think anybody knows what the full roster is going to be. I think we know our top 10 teams that are part of that High Rollers Club are certainly in, and we know that, but there's a lot of teams that want to participate in this Joker's Fund that will surprise a lot of people, I think.
Again, I can only speak to the limited amount of interaction I've had, Brad, but same, I've had sprint car drivers and teams that, are independents or did compete with the Outlaws last year who have reached out and asked me for information and asked to get in contact with you and Andy and everybody at High Limit. So clearly it's making noise, right? And I imagine that was one of the first goals you guys set out to accomplish, was let's make some noise and bring a little bit of attention to this deal. And then with the announcement coming out, last week or so, it's done its job. You talked a lot about racing with Casey Kane Racing for so much of your career. How much of this, because this is all geared towards the owners. Now, it has trickle-down effect. It's going to help these drivers, and I spoke to one of them a little while ago about how this deal, the High Roller Club, helps them, a driver. But I just want to know, you don't own a 410 Wing Sprint Car national team. A lot of discussions, I imagine, over your driving career. How much would you say those conversations, whether it's been with Casey, whether it's been with other car owners, what do you look back on as far as major influences to making this deal come through? Because as a series owner, you have to understand the plight of something you've never been, a national team owner.
Yeah. I think just living, eating, breathing, making my living, night in and night out, in sprint car racing, from promoting to, taking over Silver Dollar Speedway to, managing, our Napa sponsorship at Casey Kane Racing to, just every aspect. I think, of 10 to 12 years of being on the road, has given me a great passion, for this sport. And I think it's really important for guys like me that, are the younger generation and ambitious to try to grow the sport for the next generation. And, I think there's just a little bit of love for business and a strong passion for sprint car racing kind of coming together, and some opportunity with FloRacing and with Kyle and, just a lot of behind the scenes stuff that has driven, kind of this whole movement. And I think, we really want to make the thing great, and more professional and make it more sustainable. But there's also a fan element, more exciting for the fans. And I think everything we do, you can see all that. It's, we can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but really actions speak louder than words. So, when you go back and watch a High Limit event, you can see the extra fan engagement and excitement from the fans. And you guys do a great job as announcers, getting that message out and portraying, what we're trying to accomplish here at High Limit. And then, behind the scenes, this business stuff, I know it's kind of confusing for the fans, but it doesn't really change anything. We're still going to continue to put on great racing events, and, all that stuff is just mainly for the team owners and the race drivers to kind of make a living and hopefully invest in the sport and, kind of see our long-term goals and hopefully they can align with us and we can go and accomplish those together. So, there's a lot of different aspects and elements I think that gets confused and, maybe portrayed as gimmicks, but really it's just transparency. It's what I always felt like we were lacking, when we were, on the World of Outlaw tour. We felt like we didn't get, the numbers on viewership from streaming. We didn't know what the revenue was. We couldn't, relay those messages to our sponsors. We just felt like we were, blind on a lot of aspects. So, building this in a different way, I think is really important to make sure those teams that are investing, with us and, starting up don't feel that same way that we felt.
During that High Roller Club announcement, there was a lot of information in there, especially for the 2027 and 2028 versions of it, and how guys can get one of the High Roller Club spots and be a card holder, I guess you could say. The two ways to do that: finish top 3 in points in either 26 or 27, or top 8 in both of those years. Why were those the parameters? Like, what was the thinking going into that? Why were those the numbers that you were trying to hit for these guys to be able to earn one of those High Roller Club spots?
Yeah, it's a balancing act. I think you want to definitely reward the teams that believed in us and earn those High Roller club spots initially from those first 2 years, but also incentivize, some teams that maybe didn't jump with us or, that haven't earned a spot yet. You want to, make sure it's performance driven and that they're contributing to the overall system. So those thresholds are important. If you come in and you're able to beat, our top 10 guys and kind of mix in with them and, add value to the whole club, then, we think that you've earned the right to be a part of it. Obviously, if you earn the top 3, that's immense value, in sprint car racing. If you can be a top 3 team in either series, you're going to help to contribute to ticket sales and sponsorships and branding and everything that's so important to grow this. So, a top 8 2 years in a row, is no easy task with High Limit Racing with the field that we have. So, trying to set some parameters, but also, making sure that the guys that we have, feel like they get rewarded for everything they put in as well. So, yeah, it's definitely a balancing act. It's definitely different than any other system out there with, no guaranteed spots, in the races or anything like that. This is just, strictly a different way to kind of do the point fund and tow money and, give some value, some enterprise value to the team owners, long term that they can sell down the road if they, want to, retire and get out of the sport. So yeah, just trying to create something where a few more guys could earn those if they potentially come in and perform, well enough.
Brad, so far I've been asking and gearing a lot of what you and I have talked about through the car owners lens, right? Because that's, fairly, that's what it all comes down to. If there's no car owners, there's no sprint car racing. And sometimes people forget that. But I did speak to Aaron Reitzel right before we jumped on here to record. And he obviously raved about how good of an idea this is. And he said, honestly, he's amazed that it took this long for a group to come up with this idea. Aaron's been a great addition to High Limit Racing since they came on full time last year. But he said something interesting, which, yeah, of course, this is good for the car owners and it's good for the teams. You mentioned it already. You can budget. You're aware of what your car is going to bring in over the course of a year. So it really allows you a little bit more room to kind of move your arms around it and make deals happen, as to say. But Aaron brought up a good point, and I want to know your thoughts on this. Was this an intended consequence? Aaron said, hey, listen, I've got my deal with Ridge & Sons Racing. Now that they know what they're going to be seeing in these monthly payments after our result and being a member of the High Roller Club, he goes, I know what my percentage of our deal at Ridge & Sons Racing is, so it allows me personally a little bit more freedom to kind of stretch my arms and go, hey, I'm looking at acquiring a rental property or whatever other kind of business he may be involved in. And even if it's early in the season and he hasn't won a lot of races yet, he knows that thanks to this high roller club, more money's coming into the team, which means more money is coming into him. Obviously, this was all done to assist the car owners, but did you see it having an immediate effect on the drivers and the guys who climb in these things and compete night in and night out?
Yeah, absolutely. As a driver that's, earned my living, doing this for a long time, it's something that, is always a challenge is you don't know what your income is going to be. There's no salaries in sprint car racing, so to speak. And, you're literally, your money that you make in a year can shift so much. It's really hard to, invest money and work with the banks or do anything like that. So, I'm not complaining by any means. I've made a great living sprint car racing, but Aaron brings up a great point. Maybe there can be salaries negotiated now and things that are going to help, better the drivers' lives a little bit or make it easier to get up and down the road and things like that. So, I think, it's a win-win. And we've thought through it a lot and put a lot of time and effort into the whole thing. And you're certainly hearing about a lot of questions with the change from drivers, how do we negotiate with their owners? And I do think that, obviously with more money and more, kind of upfront knowing what the owner is going to make, it's going to be easier for them to create those budgets together and work through those, contracts and things that are going to, make it easier for the driver to know what they're going to make and the owner to budget what they can afford to pay the driver. So I still think there's going to be a ton of performance incentive, which is really important in sprint car racing. We need the drivers to go out and put a show on every night. So, that winner's pool bonus, I think, is really important. Obviously the franchises, the higher you are, in the high roller club, the more money you're going to bring in, so there's still a lot of incentive to perform, on both sides, night in and night out, and also, in the overall points.
You mentioned earlier that the high roller club is obviously not going to change the on-track product. We know that. I mean, it's just kind of a thing that's going on behind the scenes, but I did have a couple of fans, and I'm going to ask you some questions here throughout this from fans that are, they want to know some things as well. And one of them was, I thought kind of interesting, in motocross, if the guy wins the championship in motocross, we know the next year he's got the red plate, he's number one. Australia kind of does the same thing. We see that with McFadden. He's the number one guy. And we see that on their cars or on their dirt bikes. I had one fan ask, with these cards, would we see any branding like that at the race? Maybe on the flags in the pit area. Maybe it's on their driver's suit. Maybe it's on their, I don't know, maybe every year when the next guy gets the number or the queen card, like we see that on his suit. Or is that something that you guys are planning on trying to implement, or is that kind of not going on right now?
It's a good idea. We're certainly open to good ideas and new ideas. So, I think as the high roller club catches on and people actually understand it, I think that's the important thing. Is right now it's just the explanation of what it is. We certainly felt like there was some confusion around the whole system. So just trying to make it as simple as possible. I certainly think as drivers earn those cards and things, you're going to probably see them, especially the ace, being the top dog is going to be really important. And so, I think as it grows, we'll certainly be open to those ideas and concepts. And, once our brand gets a little bit bigger, those things will be even more important and more meaningful. So, I could definitely foresee something like that happening.
I think those are great ideas as well. Maybe each driver from that team should have to carry a physical playing card that represents where they are in the high roller club. And if they lose it, then you owe the guy at the wheel spin, Tony Laporta, $50. We can negotiate that later. We'll get into that. I think it's probably an idea lots of fans are going to get behind. Hey, Brad, you talked about the winner's bonus pool. It's going to distribute $105,000 among the 5 winningest teams, including ties in 2026, increasing by $27,500 each season through 2029, when the total reaches $187,500. The winner's pool, was that something that from the beginning was a part of this deal, or that? Because to me, it kind of sounds like maybe something at the very end that got thrown in and was like, hey, this can continue to enrich the opportunities for these car owners and these drivers. Where did the winner's bonus pool fit into this in the kind of flow as everything came together?
I think we discussed, different pools of money and making sure that we had, money for the non-high roller club teams, the money for the high roller club teams, obviously, and then, really want to incentivize nightly, performances. We don't want, drivers and teams to get too content where, guys are riding around or anything like that. So incentivizing winning races is really important, I think. And that fund's just a nice, added bonus for a team that went out and performed at a high level. Also because the franchise system is a 2-year running average. So the money's kind of set in stone sometimes based off of, 2 years previous, maybe a bad year or a different driver. That winner pool allows if a driver steps up or the team really gets red hot, brings a lot of value to the system. There's some extra money for them to earn based off of wins. Because if you're going out and winning the most races in a year, you deserve, probably a bonus. So yeah, just kind of, some cool incentives for teams, to go after, whether you're in the high roller club or not, you can participate in that, winner's bonus pool.
Well, like I said, I was going to keep asking questions that I've seen on social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or YouTube comments or whatever from fans, and I'm sure you've seen them as well. The biggest question that I think everybody has with this entire thing is, and I don't know if we need to edit this out or not, but what the biggest question is, where is all this money coming from that we are paying out to these guys? I don't know if you want to answer that and we can edit this question out. Tyler, you might have to do a lot of editing right here to get me to stop saying this stuff, but where is the money coming from? That's what all the fans, for some reason, want to know. I feel like I know, but Brad, can you tell me?
I think it's a fair question. I think if you look at all the major sports, you can say at times that, the stadiums or arenas aren't full. Say baseball or sometimes in basketball you'll see, but there's a media rights, right? There's millions and millions of people across the world watching, sports from homes. And with streaming, it's changed the game a lot because it's more direct from the consumer straight to the entity. And you've seen things like the NFL move to Amazon Prime, and you've seen, even NASCAR, go towards a streaming, type network, or I guess streaming, and more direct money coming straight from the consumer to NASCAR. So I think what we're seeing is, that we have a value of a certain amount of people that are willing to, subscribe to Flow and to watch Kubota High Limit Racing. And, that's the revenues that we're, really wanting to share with the teams, and the growth that we want to share with the teams. And I think that you're just seeing a really exciting product, and fans are starting to, recognize that and see that and participate in, FloRacing and Dirt Vision and other streaming platforms. It seems like the culture's really moved away from, just having a big TV package with a bunch of channels, and more, individualized, households wanting to watch exactly what they want to watch. So you subscribe to this and that and this, and that's what you have in your house, whether it's YouTube or Amazon Prime or Fubo or, Flow or Dirt Vision. And so those revenues, directly, go straight towards the value of, Kubota High Limit or whatever, is on that streaming platform, that those families are willing to pay for to watch. So I think the business, is still at the track. Selling tickets is still really important, and entertaining the fans that come to the tracks. I definitely think that's, still our main focus, but also having a product that shows well on streaming with efficiency and excitement, and, middle of the week, and entertaining fans, as much as we possibly can. And, we're certainly seeing the growth on the streaming side of the business. And, that's where the revenues ultimately are growing, at a higher rate of speed. And that's where the revenues, that we can certainly share, more with the teams, and it helps, make this more of a sustainable business model.
Brad, a few minutes ago, Chase was asking a question. He I'm paraphrasing here probably, but talked about how, doesn't expect this announcement, the High Roller Club, to really affect the racing very much. It's something that'll go on in the background of the sport, because the money's always gone on in the background of the sport. Fans don't come to the track to watch guys get checks written in their names. They come to watch them race and earn those checks. But I'm going to argue and ask your opinion. I do think this will influence the nightly product on track, because for so long, I think those big purse, those high winning amounts of money races, hey, come, watch the Eldora Million and see the best sprint car drivers in the world race for $1 million. You have no idea what they'll do for $1 million. I think with this High Roller Club and all the extra money that's being put on the table now for these drivers and teams, I see this absolutely intensifying the on-track competition and making it way more exciting, cutthroat, intense, whatever you want to say, because all these drivers and car owners know what's on the table with how they do nightly and how they do in the year-end championship. Again, was that a thought process? Was that a point that you guys saw becoming a part of this? And honestly, do you even agree with my assumption that this will ramp up the on-track product at night?
I think one thing that's exciting about Kubota High Limit Racing is the unpredictability of our shows and, our roster from top to bottom, and really not knowing who's going to win and who's going to podium, on a nightly basis. And I think when you create a system, I've kind of, as I've dug into this and learned a little bit, I think one piece of advice someone gave me early on was it's a system like this is capitalism meets socialism. And, we want to build something that's good from the top to the bottom. And to your point, we want our drivers to be hungry that are maybe towards the bottom of the High Roller Club or on the outside looking in, trying to earn those spots. And so that's why there's performance thresholds. That's why the money's good from the top to the bottom, but it definitely gains as you go up the ladder. So, yeah, I think you make a lot of valid points. I think they're great. It's definitely what we're trying to accomplish is have everybody in the system doing well, but with the incentive to do better. And I think that will create, the best on-track product is, 15 guys in the pits that could win on a nightly basis and the fans not knowing, who's going to get the job done, and, incentives for those drivers, maybe to step up and earn that, extra cash.
My next question is, it's actually a two-part question. I'm going to try and word it correctly here, but it's been rumored heavily here, and maybe it's already happened and it's just kind of going on behind the scenes, but, there's been a lot of different media outlets kind of talking about this, but the selling of a High Roller Club position, it sounds like that there has been one of those positions that has maybe been sold off, but then it's been bought up by a different team that is trying to join the High Roller Club. Here's the two questions. One of them is, will we in the future know when that happens and how much that sells for? I know that's something in NASCAR that a lot of people pay attention to when those get sold. And the other side of it is, how gratifying is it to know that one of those has been sold and immediately snatched up by somebody else because they want to be a part of this?
Yeah, I don't think that we can necessarily know for sure if anything's been sold yet. I don't think it's public knowledge, or even been disclosed to me via, I've heard the same rumors everybody else has heard. So I do think it will be really cool when the first one does sell. I think that will give some fans, a team owners, some perspective on, what it means to have a business, associated with future earnings. That's really the value of a business is, what it can potentially bring in the future. And, with a card on the High Roller Club, you can, know what the next year is going to bring, and you can sell that to the next car owner. When you decide that, hey, I'm going to go a different direction, or I'm going to retire or whatnot, you have, something into the future. Obviously, this is early on, so we don't know, what the market and demand and what those sale prices are necessarily going to be. But as the values go up, in those earnings, as the guaranteed money goes up, those values are only going to go higher. So, that's what we want the team owners to understand and buy into and believe in. And, ultimately, we can say that that's what we're going to do or we want, but when it actually starts to happen and transpire, that's a great thing. And, obviously very hopeful that something like that does take place, or, that is the truth behind, what we're hearing. And ultimately, I think that'll be great news for the whole system and kind of give everybody a little perspective, like I said.
Brad, all I'm hearing is I think we're going to need to invest in a mobile Flow financial set, and I can be like a modern day Jim Cramer. I know you're a business guy. You probably watch replays of his show. I don't even know if he's still on TV. If he is, good.
He is.
Okay,
He
good.
is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jim Cramer, I can be on the screen yelling like high limit, high roller club, buy. And I'm just like whacking like a big red inflatable button or something. I don't know. I think that's a great opportunity for us to expand what we show. It could be like Flow Financial, FloRacing. There's a lot of money to be made here, I think. And I guess when you see all this coming together and you see what it's doing for the sport, I always tell people this, coming to work for you last year, I learned the most important thing about you I learned last year was you genuinely just love the sport of sprint car racing. You just want it to grow. That's what you said in your championship speech last year at Tannehill's in Texas. What is this like for you personally to see you helping push? It's not all on you. I know you would never say that, but to be one of the driving forces behind pushing this boulder up the mountain of sprint car racing. What's it feel like to you personally at this point?
Yeah, I think for me, winning championships and the Knoxville Nationals and the Kings Royal, felt really good. There were personal accolades and, personal goals achieved. But I think when you look at what high limit racing, has become and kind of what sold me on it was more of something for everybody. It was a way to really leave my ideas and hopefully vision for the sport, leave a lasting impression on the sport. And so I think it's really exciting that we're early on in the early stages and we've got it launched and we're doing well and we have a lot of great ideas. And I know it's going to be a lot of uphill challenges to get to where we all want to go. But it truly is gratifying, exciting. It's competitive, to be honest. I mean, we're competing with so many other forms of outdoor entertainment and streaming services and, not just in the racing communities, but kind of everywhere. And that's kind of what I want, it to be viewed as is, a professional sport that's, more mainstream and everybody knows what a sprint car is, or at least, what short track dirt racing is, grassroots level racing, because I think our product is ultimately one of the most exciting products out there. I just think that we've never really showed it the right way. And now we have this great opportunity with streaming to really grow our audience and show people, these superstar drivers that go out there and risk their lives, all the time and to entertain fans and, all the talented crew guys that make all the sacrifices. You guys, on-air personalities, what you guys do for High Limit and showcasing, how passionate we are and what we're all about, to the fans on a nightly basis. So it's definitely a big team, and we definitely at High Limit Racing have a great staff of very passionate individuals that we all come together and, we argue and we laugh and we, debate. But ultimately it's like you said, Tony, it's like we're all just passionate about sprint car racing and we just want the best for it. And we've come together as a group and we all have a voice and an opinion. And at High Limit, we listen to everything and we're innovative. We're willing to pivot. We're willing to come up with new ideas. We're willing to do whatever it takes to grow the sport. And I think you're seeing that. I think you're just seeing a bunch of, individuals come together that love it and love each other. And I think the possibilities are endless. And for me, it's just exciting that I get to be a part of that. And, hopefully when it's all said and done, we can look back at sprint car racing in 20 or 30 years and we can all be grateful that we did this together.
No doubt about that. Earlier this week, the All-Star Circuit Champions, they released their schedule. And what I thought was very interesting on that schedule was there's going to be a couple of co-sanctions, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the first time we've had that with High Limit Racing. 2 nights at Kokomo and then that 1 night at Lawrenceburg with the All-Stars. That's pretty cool. The All-Stars came back last year after having a year off. But what went into the decision making of doing a co-sanction with those guys? Because that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. We're around, the area that they're obviously prevalent in and they've done a good job. I thought last year kind of, kind of rebranding and kind of putting on some, exciting events and kind of having a different group of cars. And, just felt like if we're going to be in the same area, why not come together and work together on a few things? And so Rich Farmer and myself, I think Kokomo is important to kind of get some more cars at, and obviously Lawrenceburg's important to get cars at, and kind of in those areas that there's not a lot of Wing 410s, necessarily readily available. So yeah, just it made a lot of sense from both standpoints to showcase both brands, and both very exciting racetracks, and obviously allows us to promote an even bigger event for sure.
I was going to say, you must have a good relationship with the owners of the All-Star Circuit of Champions to help get that deal done. And then I think the big rumor that we can absolutely just lay out here on the table and talk about is the fact that with you and Kevin Radine acquiring NARC this past offseason or before the offseason really even began, it's pretty much all but certain now that you're going to be in California year-round driving a water truck. Will you be watching live on Flow all of our nights of High Limit Racing? And do you want us to do anything to say hello to you on air when you're at the NARC events, getting those tracks just dialed in?
They didn't tell you, Tony, that I'm going to have a direct earpiece to you to be able to communicate with you every night, just to make sure that you're keeping that show moving,
Yeah, it's gonna be so weird. I tell you this, when you made your announcement at the banquet, you broke down in tears. You didn't see me breaking down in tears back behind stage because I thought, who is going to be at the wheel spin almost every single night asking me if we're ready to go yet and what are we waiting on? So this affects a lot of people, Brad.
Yeah, definitely something I'm very, very passionate about is efficiency, planning and executing the plan. I feel like, night in and night out, it's the most important thing is start time and end time, and making sure that the fans, get to see entertainment, for those 2.5 hours that we get them for. So, I'll be watching, but I know you guys will do a great job. I'll probably be at quite a few, racing some, and just spectating some. But like you said, I'll be out here in California working at Silver Dollar Speedway and, helping with NARC where I can. So definitely still got a busy, plate in front of me. But I have all the confidence in the world that you guys are going to still handle those nightly duties as well as you guys have. And I'll be cheering for you guys. And yeah, I don't really expect a lot to look a lot different other than just, I won't get to see you guys at the dash draw as much, and won't get to,
dang it,
be racing as much on the road. But that's also kind of exciting for me with where I'm at in my life. So yeah, a lot of exciting things for me personally, and I think for all of us at High Limit Racing, we have a lot of things in front of us that are pretty excited. I don't think we've released all the information and all the excitement we have just yet. So I'd expect some pretty cool announcements coming soon.
Well, don't forget that, you will be able to tell Tony to hurry it up in Australia, because you are coming out of retirement here in a couple weeks as we go to Perth Motorplex. High Limit International, raising the stakes a little bit there, $110,000 a win, for the finale over there. And it is, Brad, this is going to be, and I don't know much about Australia sprint car racing, as you found out last year when I didn't know how to book my flights, but,
that was this year.
No, but last year it was a whole deal.
Oh,
I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how many days it took to get there. But anyway.
Oh, I remember that.
It sounds like there's going to be like 12 or 13 Americans going to Perth Motorplex. This is going to be a massive show, and we are looking forward to seeing it all take place. But how excited are you to get back to Perth and see another huge race with that many Americans coming over? And some really, really strong. The Australian contingent is going to be extremely tough as well.
It's honestly very exciting. I was looking at the driver roster, and I think really the only driver that you'd say is, maybe missing from the whole equation is David Gravel. If you really look at it with Kyle Larson, Corey Day, Rico, Reitzel, myself, Carson Macedo, Buddy Kofoid. If you threw David in there, you'd have every top American basically. But I know David's getting ready to have a baby, and he likes his off season. So, it's honestly that alone, just with that racetrack, and then you throw in Callum Williamson, Dane Kingshot, and James McFadden, and all those Australians that I think the fans underestimate and don't know. American fans don't know how good those guys are, especially at Perth. And then you throw in like our guys. It's just between Rico, Corey, Kyle, Carson Macedo, Buddy. I mean, this track is going to play perfect into the scenario of, who can drive the hardest, closest to the fence. And so I'm excited. I hope that, I can step up and give those guys a run for their money. But as a spectator, it's definitely one of those things where, I think it's a must see, event. And I think Perth's unique because, we can watch it from America in the morning, which is kind of cool. So I'm sure we'll get all the times out, on Flow, for everyone to know what time they need to tune in. But it's kind of a mimosas and sprint cars, right? So, and they do a great job at Perth. They run an efficient program, and, there'll be 40 or so cars, and it'll be really exciting. So looking forward to you guys calling that over there, and looking forward to the show. I think it'll be another phenomenal race.
Mimosas and sprint cars. People get mad at me when I do it over here in the States at 8 p.m., but maybe it'll be different in Australia. I don't really have anything else to ask, Brad, but I do want to let you know that I reached out to both Brent Marks and Aaron Reitzel before we recorded. Aaron gave me his perspective, obviously, as a driver. Brent, co-owner at Murray Marks Motorsports and the driver, he just sent me a text kind of summing up his thoughts on the High Roller Club, and I thought it was worth mentioning. Brent just wrote, so the High Roller Club is a great opportunity for all of us to grow our programs, organizations, pay our team fair wages, and invest into the people that will work extremely hard to move our teams up to the ace card in the coming years. I'm fortunate to be a part of this series, and it's been exciting to see its growth in such a short time. Brent Marks, he could have a career in public relations when he's done with this driving thing, but he hit on something right there, Brad, that, again, not really a question. I like it a lot, and I imagine you do as well. He talked about the money being there now to invest in the people on the team that will work extremely hard to move up to the ace card position in the High Roller Club. It sounds like Brent Marks has the exact kind of vision you guys had for this thing back in the beginning.
Yeah, and Brent works hard at managing his team. He's the, perfect car owner, type that we're, trying to help. It's obviously there's some car owners in our sport that can afford to do this as a hobby, and that's fine. But there's a lot of them that can't, and those are the ones that we're, obviously trying to build something, long-term and sustainable for. So Brent, has been a great asset to High Limit Racing. He's definitely a driver that can win, night in and night out and competes at a high level. So, to hear his perspective is great. He makes a great point with crew guys. I think it's really important to have something where they're getting paid fair wages, but also, a little bit of that freedom, I think, goes a long way with crew guys and drivers as well. So, weekend off or here and there throughout a season isn't such a bad thing. And, it's a pretty grinding and grueling schedule, and a lot of people make a lot of sacrifices to make it happen. So, yeah, just all that stuff's great to hear. It's all very gratifying, and it just makes me excited for the future. It's just we just got to continue to keep putting on, great entertaining races night in and night out, and I think possibilities are endless for sprint car racing, no doubt.
And the final thing I'll ask you, or that we'll ask you here today, Brad, is I was looking at some numbers on one of my favorite websites, of course, that's sprintcarratings.com, and I just got them behind me here, but last year, there was $19,400,000 paid out in sprint car racing. The year before, it was $18,200,000. We went from 36 drivers that made $100,000 last year to 44 this year, including about 8 guys that made over 6 figures for the first time in their career. And one other thing that I thought was interesting was Cy Lynch was the final driver to get over 100,000 this year, 101,000, I believe. And last year, it was 91,000 for his same position. So Cy Lynch was 44th overall in earnings this year. The guy last year was Ayrton Jeniton. He had 91,000. The year before that, it was 66,000 at the 44th position. It's very clear that it's obviously very expensive to run a sprint car team, but it is very clear that the money is now starting to trickle down farther in that order compared to where it was at maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where you kind of see those same names in the top 10 making the same kind of amounts. But now, do you see this as well, how it's kind of funneling down to the not big game motorsports and Casey Kane Racings of the world? They're making more money and helping their teams get up and down the road better now.
Yeah, and I think one thing that it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think those numbers, throw in tow money or point fund money.
Yeah, no,
just winnings.
Yeah, that's just purse money. That's a big difference. And then if you look at all the other monies that are supporting these teams, I think that's why you're seeing the influx of teams go from, local or regional level to make that jump to, national touring. I think that's, one thing maybe we all didn't realize or expect is that there's another 15 cars that all of a sudden are running in a national touring series now and coast to coast. And, I don't think that's possible without Kubota High Limit or FloRacing making that investment into the sport. And yeah, like I said, I think there was a need and a want, from fans, and, there's a lot of markets and areas that were untapped, and a lot of car owners and drivers that wanted to be out here, doing it for a living. So I think the opportunity, that we're providing is definitely working. And I think there's a lot of fans getting entertained by, a lot of different sprint car racing right now. And it's exciting to be a part of the overall growth of the sport. I think it's, ultra important to continue to push and grow as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, it's certainly a good time. Oh,
Chase, I was just going to ask you, Chase, one more time. Reiterate, I want to hear that number again, the teams that went from making 100,000 or more last year to this year. What was that difference again?
It was 36 last year and 44 this year. If you include Brady Bacon, who missed it by $250, it'd be 45 teams made over six figures. So,
see, that just doesn't sound right.
Say nine more teams, basically, just off of purse money. Have taken that jump up. So,
see, I read on the internet that High Limit was bad for sprint car racing, so I don't think those numbers are correct.
Yeah, I also heard High Limit was bad for Ohio,
But we love the haters. We got to point that out, because the haters are what motivate us, every day. We don't do our talking, on the internet. We do it all by our performance, at the races and on the track, and based off of datas and numbers. And what's more motivational than to prove the haters wrong?
That's my quarterback right there.
Absolutely. Well, Brad, hey, thanks for jumping on here and clearing some things up for us. And hopefully that answered some more questions for some people that were curious out there, wondering about the whole High Roller Club and the Jokers Fund. But yeah, thanks for jumping on here, and we'll see you in a few weeks down there in Australia.
Yep. Thanks for having me on, guys.